Guys, you want to be like everybody else? You really want to be like everybody else? Let me tell you what it's going to be like if you get a king. If you reject God and his leadership and his authority, just know this is going to be what it's like. How many of you have ever done something and you said, man, I just didn't know it was going to be this way? And so he does. So from verse 11, he starts this list. Now you need to underline that. There's 6 statements there about what this king is going to do, about what this government is going to do, about this expanded government influence in their life. I mean, can't you just enjoy the blessing that God has, lean into him, follow him, just be humble? Remember, God has taken care of you for almost 400 years during the days of the judges, and you didn't have problems when you were humble before God. It was when you weren't humble before God that you got in trouble, and quite honestly, a king would not have helped in that situation. Humility and dependence upon God was the only thing that would help. So if you get this king, just know, verse 11, he's going to take your sons and your daughters. And they're going to be taken into his service. They're going to be his military. You're going to have a standing military. He's going to have horses. He's going to have fields. And they're going to be working for him. They're not going to be with you. Your daughters are going to be bakers, and he lists a whole series of things that the girls are going to be doing. Part of his harem, etc. He's going to take the best of your fields. He's going to look at your fields and say, oh man, that's really productive over here. I'm sorry, eminent domain, the government's got to have that. He's going to take 1/10 of all of your seeds. So whenever you grow something, just know he's going to tax you, and he's going to take whatever you produce. Your seed, your fruit, whatever comes from the ground. He's going to take your male servants and your female servants. In other words, their system of employment. And so like if you didn't have resources, you didn't have a family farm, whatever the case might be, you would sell yourself as a servant in Israel, and you would work for somebody for a determined period of time, and then you would get compensation, and they would care for you, and then you'd have a grub stake, and you would do something. If you read through the book of Genesis, you see this with Jacob. Remember, he goes and lives with Uncle Laban, but he doesn't have any money to pay the dowry, so he works for him for 7 years. How many of you remember that story? All right, that's how they did it, right? And rather than what we do. Anyways, and then they'll take 1/10 of all of your flock. Now listen, when he takes, a key word is what? Take. Put it, circle that word. Take. We're talking expanded government. Here's the principle. Expanded government will take. And the net effect will be, what's the bottom line when you have take plus take plus take plus take plus take plus take? You yourselves will become slaves. You will become slaves. So this is what will happen. The king will own you. Government will own you rather than you own the government. This is really a blessing, friends, that you and I have received, and people don't understand this. A constitutional republic means we, the people, can own the government, not that the government owns us. And here's the problem today. Everyone out there, well, not everyone, but many in the government, unfortunately, believe that they own us rather than the other way around.
They own our kids.
Yeah, they own our kids. We could go on for a long time. You're absolutely right. Well, I want you to know that this is not new in history. So when I was a student, I first trusted Christ, and I'm reading through the Bible, and I'm seeing this in Samuel. I don't remember the exact order, if I read this before or after, but I remember when Ronald Reagan became president. The interest rate was 22%. What's your interest rate on your house? How would you like to have 22%? Inflation was taking place at an unprecedented rate, like never happened in American history before, like we're experiencing right now. How do you get inflation? It's called printing money. That's how you get it. It's the only way you get it. It's all true through history. And there was another problem that they had then, and I remember this, is my family had a small business, and so we went and got a 250-gallon gas tank because we wouldn't be able to get fuel all of the time, and there were these long lines at the gas station because energy shut down. All that was happening, so because we had this business, we had to have a certain amount of fuel to function. You understand what I'm saying? So inflation, fuel shortages, and interest rates. Y'all with me? And people were being crushed. And so here I am just as a student, I'm reading this about take. And this guy ends up getting elected president. He's dead. How many of you know he's dead? All right? So you can't vote for him or anything like that, but understand the concept. I want you to hear 3 minutes of his inaugural address. Listen to what he says, because this is exactly what you and I are experiencing. We need to understand the principles that are being described here. Listen to this.
The business of our nation goes forward. These United States are confronted with an economic affliction of great proportions. We suffer from the longest and one of the worst sustained inflations in our national history. It distorts our economic decisions, penalizes thrift, and crushes the struggling young and the fixed income elderly alike. It threatens to shatter the lives of millions of our people. Idle industries have cast workers into unemployment, human misery, and personal indignity. Those who do work are denied a fair return for their labor by a tax system which penalizes successful achievement and keeps us from maintaining full productivity. But great as our tax burden is, it has not kept pace with public spending. For decades, we have piled deficit upon deficit, mortgaging our future and our children's future for the temporary convenience of the present. To continue this long trend is to guarantee tremendous social, cultural, political, and economic upheavals. You and I, as individuals, can, by borrowing, live beyond our means, but for only a limited period of time. Why then should we think that collectively, as a nation, we're not bound by that same limitation? We must act today in order to preserve tomorrow. And let there be no misunderstanding. We're going to begin to act, beginning today. The economic ills we suffer have come upon us over several decades. They will not go away in days, weeks, or months, but they will go away. They will go away because we, as Americans, have the capacity now, as we've had in the past, to do whatever needs to be done to preserve this last and greatest bastion of freedom. In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. Well, if no one among us is capable of governing himself, then who among us has the capacity to govern someone else?
Now, there's a load of things that parallel the passage we just read. And let me just show you a couple of crazy numbers here, because we're talking about government. We're talking about big government and the consequences of that. He was warning them. This is from the Minnesota state government. Minnesota state government is the largest employer in the state of Minnesota. That's interesting. U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. U.S. government needs a lot of workers to provide many services. IRS page. Americans work more than 99 days of the year before earning enough money to pay the federal, state, and local taxes. So this was in 2014. So you work 3.5 months out of the year just to pay taxes. That's exactly the warning that Samuel was giving the people. Are you sure you want this? You really don't want this consequence. He said, well, Mark, those are statistics, and I really don't understand what that means in reality. Well, let me just give it to you this way. In Minnesota, the average household income, the median household income, so 50% or over, 50% or under, is $73,382. You divide that by 12 for 12 months, and then you take 3.5 months of work to pay your taxes. That means that each of our households pay $21,403. Let me ask you a question. Is that a lot? It's a lot. And how many of you know the government outspends what we end up giving? So now we're going to borrow money so that our children can work more months. And maybe we'll end up being like Canada. Right now in Canada, you have to work 5.5 months to pay the tax burden there. Well, how did they respond to the warning? He says, when all this happens, then you're going to cry out to God. God, it's just too hard. We can't get along. We just can't survive this. That's what's going to happen. And God will not answer you on that day. Now, friends, listen to me just really careful. When we do foolish things, God is gracious, but it's only for a period of time. In other words, people have this idea like God's grace never has limits. Here's a limit. You might live 70 years here on the earth. You've got 70 years of grace, opportunity to believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. And if you say, no, I don't want him, guess what? There's coming a day, we're going to put you in a box, and that's it. You're not going to have a chance after that. Do you remember back in Genesis chapter 6, God says, I'm going to, 120 years, my grace is going to be extended to them, but then the flood's going to come. And then God tells Noah, get in the ark, and they shut the door. God shut the door. Boom, 120 years. That was it. Even so, here's your opportunity. Here's the gracious moment. Don't do this. Don't go this direction. Because if you do, and you get yourself in trouble, I'm not coming to rescue you from it. You're going to live with the consequences, and your children will live with the consequences forever. And when we get to 2 Kings chapter 11, we're going to see them crying out, the tax burden's too high. Could have told you that. Could have told you that.